Hello. Hello? Can I have your attention, please, over here? I'd like to shortly welcome you to V2, the Institute for the Unstable Media, and to this Test Lab Summer Sessions 2012. My name is Michel van Dachtel. I'm one of the curators here in the V2 Institute, and it's my pleasure to host you at this Test Lab event tonight. If you're not used to the Test Lab format yet, it's kind of peculiar. Normally you see artists jumping up and down from a stage. Here we sort of turn it around, and you, the audience, will actually move through the space to meet the artists at their work and see a demonstration. This is also the evening where V2 invites artists to bring work from their workspaces and studios into our presentation space, present it to you, and where you serve as a critical test panel to these works. So it's crucial that you participate tonight in the Q&As, and otherwise speak to the artists afterwards and let them know what you think of their work, because your feedback is what it's all about tonight. Tonight is a rather special edition of the Summer Sessions. We do this every other month, and we always have a certain theme, but tonight's theme comes back every year. It's the Summer Sessions, and the Summer Sessions are a sort of pressure cooker residency format that we host in our V2 lab. As you may know, we have a small developer lab up on the top floor of this building, where we have hardware and software developers working together with artists to produce artworks. And every summer, for 4 to 6 weeks, we open these doors to some young, new and upcoming talent, and they are welcomed to use our facilities and use the expertise in that lab to produce a new work. And the only requirement we give them is that after 6 weeks, tonight at Test Lab, they have a finished prototype to show to you. So we're going to have 4 premieres tonight. We received again this year many applicants that wanted to participate in the summer session, and we ended up selecting 3 artists and 1 artist duo. And we're going to see them present their work tonight. These are Constantijn Smit, Carina Hesper, Tom Verbruggen, and artist duo Stam and Simon de Bakker. You will get a more elaborate introduction from the project managers of these projects just before their presentation starts. And these project managers more or less are the coaches that they had over these 4 to 6 weeks working in the lab. So the order of things is we're going to see some demonstrations first. There's Q&As after the demonstrations. Then there's ample time for you to speak to the artists, see the works from closer, try stuff out yourself. And because tonight's also a little bit of a celebration, the end of the summer sessions, we have a special cocktail for you after all the demonstrations called the Summer Soberlini, designed especially for tonight by Alex Falk. And we're going to have a performance for you by TokTek. There's one more person that I should introduce to you before we can begin, and that's our critical respondent. Because most of the people here at V2 have been closely involved in the production of these works, it's kind of difficult to take a step back and have a critical view on these works. So that's why we always, for this summer session edition of Test Lab, invite an external person with a good critical eye to come in and open the Q&As after the demonstrations. And we found the perfect person to do that tonight, and that's Mariette Dolle, right next to me. She will open the Q&As. She's the artistic director of Tent, a venue for visual arts that you may know, because it's right across the street. And we're very happy that she could make it tonight, because she had an intense night last night opening the exhibition Between the Map and the Territory, which I can all recommend to you. I think without further ado, we start with the first demonstration, which will take place over here, so if you want to follow me. This will be a demonstration by Constantijn Smit, and he will be introduced by Jan Misker, one of the project managers in the V2 lab.
Yeah, thank you, Michel. So I would like to introduce you to Constantijn Smit, but first I want to say a little bit of background about where his project came from. In previous summer sessions, we all related very strictly to thematic research doing in the lab. This year we let that go a little bit, but still, of course, we have this research and expertise, and in this case, actually in augmented reality. So it's a line of research that we've been involved in for a long time. Then Constantijn sent his project proposal, his idea, which was actually about reduced reality, taking away information, taking away visuals, and looking what's left after after you take it all away. Actually, that's not a lot, because if you take everything away, you get nothing, which is actually the title of the project. Constantijn will tell you more about it, but let me briefly say a little bit about Constantijn himself. He actually studied business and business ethics before, but found out that that's not so interesting because art is much more interesting. So he made a big switch to art. Graduated Rietveld 2 years ago, and is now working mainly as a visual artist. So also for him it was a nice step to be able to come to V2 Lab and work with us on the project. So Constantijn.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we've had enough introduction, so we know my name is Constantijn Smit, and I'll immediately launch into the demonstration. Behind you is also the big screen where you can see what's on my screen of the iPad or iPod here, because as we already explained, it's became an iPhone app, my work. It's called Nothings. Why it's called Nothings you will see automatically. And well, let's start at the beginning. This is basically the opening screen of the app. You have 3 options, and we'll begin with start. That's kind of logical. Then you get just the camera that you have on many of these gadgets, so you're used to it, how it works. And we can take a picture. You have to watch out for this wire. So I take a picture of an object. I have an object available here. It's a red cup. And then when we have the still image of the picture, I can select it with my with touch controls. I just drag a square over the object, and the computer starts calculating. Now it picks it up. You hear a little sound, and you see slightly over the image there's a red see-through shape, and that's basically what it's all about. Because I'm trying to collect shapes. The app asks me then to submit it to where? To an online database. This online database collects all the shapes of all the users of this app in one big heap. So eventually I hope there will be thousands of users and millions of shapes, but we'll start with one now. So I submit it to the online database, and you get feedback. A nice shiny gold +1 and a chime that rewards you that you've collected the shape. As you can see here, I've got lots of shapes. They've been collected in the past few days. And I've got lots of different columns, as you can see. Well, that's basically the whole app. You think, well, that's not much. That's exactly why it's called Nothings. But there's more behind it, of course. I can go back to the main screen and we can see the collection again. Because the idea behind it is that, well, if you see here, there are different clusters. I call them clusters because these shapes are clustered together. And these clusters are made by the database. It's kind of complex, so please bear with me. I'll try to explain it as easy as possible. This online database, there's a program run against it, and it analyzes the shapes and clusters them based on their characteristics. So some of them are red, and some of them are blue circles, some of them are yellow triangles, and each get a different cluster. We don't know exactly what the characteristics are. I'll keep that a secret. So that these clusters are then feed back into the iPhone, and your personal collection is then ordered into these shapes. And why does it happen? Well, it kind of sort of gives the illusion of a system, and I want to stress illusion, because right now you've got some nice clusters. I even have an empty one, and I could decide, well, that's an interesting cluster. Why don't they have shapes there? And I go out on the street and I start looking for that shape to get it into the cluster. And I'm really happy with my shape. I go to bed, and the next morning I wake up and I think, I really want to see my nice shape again. And then suddenly the whole clustering is different, because every night or every period of time, the clusters are recalculated based on all the shapes that have been collected. So it could change dramatically. And then what once was a valuable, like this green triangle that you see there, it's a lonely triangle. It's maybe then part of a big cluster, and it's completely common. And that's so it's kind of frustrating and also kind of pointless. And that's exactly the point that I want to make. I want to have a pointless collection where the user is forced to give meaning based on its own criteria, not on the criteria I pre-programmed. So it could say to himself, okay, I'm going to start over again and only collect red shapes and see if I can influence the database in that way. And that's basically on a meta level also where I want to go, that people walk around in the street. You have a sort of situationist effect that you walk around in the street and you suddenly see a whole different way of reality because certain shapes that normally you wouldn't notice are then very important. And why do I do that? Because eventually on a meta level the point is that life itself is also an action of a lot of repetitive actions. And it's a sort of simulation of these pointless, repetitive actions, which only have meaning because you give it to them. So in a certain way, it's an existential exercise, in the form of an application. And I want everybody, of course, to join into this existential exercise in this application. And it's, of course, downloadable from iTunes pretty soon, not yet now, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks. You can also leave your email address at the bar. There's a mailing list, and I will send you a notification, and you can download it for free, because I think all good art should be enjoyed free. That's it.
Constantijn, would you mind moving over here? Because we have a live stream going on, and people need some light to see you. And the first question says, goes to Mayet.
That's a great honor. Thank you, Michel. Constantijn, I'm happy to do this public studio visit with you.
Thank you very
Normally, in the realm of contemporary art, when I visit artists, it's always in obscure and very cold studio buildings. And here we are in this great new media space of V2. You have been working here, I think, during the summer to slightly pointless, as you already pointed out. And I think it's really great and almost relaxing that you can invent a pointless activity in these times in which we have to be as efficient as possible, in which we have to categorize, measure everything we do. All our activities are measured on Facebook on a second basis. And this made me actually wonder how much of the secret of the pointless activity you are willing to share with the downloader of your app. If the app will be available in the App Store, what will you communicate to the person who looks at it and has the desire to download it and to use it?
Well, that's a good question. I think the app stands on its own. So even if I wouldn't communicate anything, if people are willing to keep using it, and I think we're working on making it as enjoyable as possible, but still having this feeling of pointlessness, that eventually you will get the right feeling that I want to have people to have in their mind, basically. But maybe with a lot of conceptual work, it's nice to just add this pointer that it's pointless. But I think the title maybe also gives that away. So yeah, that should be enough, hopefully.
Yeah, it's also maybe a little bit about a disappearing act. Yeah, because you are the photographs you are taking, and you also showed us a fantastic example photograph of the red cup. But this reality, a real image, disappears.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, I can also imagine a pointless activity just in collecting photos of details of the world around us, useless photography.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I really wanted to have just these shapes. We thought about also remembering the picture, so you could have the link always available. But for me, it's really about removing information. So, and I like the idea of almost these ideal Platonic shapes. So it almost refers to these Platonic ideals of shapes that only exist in math, basically. And now they're suddenly with you, and you can take them with them, and you can get them out of reality. So it's almost idealistic.
And how did you decide on the aesthetics of your shapes, the choice of colors and, the choice of the size of the shapes?
Well, the color is basically not decided by me. It's the computer program just takes it. First it took the average color, but now it takes the most bright color, basically based on the histogram. I don't mind which color it is, basically. As long as I do like the image, as you see with all the shapes, that you have a sort of colorful hieroglyphs. And that's also why all the shapes are based on the same system. You almost get a sort of personal language that I like, because nobody can understand it except me, because I remember where I took the shapes. Surprisingly, you're pretty good at remembering that. So in that way, yeah, it's nice that it's these small, almost computer game-like sprites.
It's almost a memory game.
It's almost a memory game,
yeah. Do you really, I mean, on the one hand, I thought it was quite an optimistic project with a strong belief in humanity, because you're absolutely convinced that we all will be happy to play this game and not be disappointed, because there's this slight element of antagonism almost.
I almost work against the user sometimes. Well, maybe it is a little bit idealistic, but if I use it, that's why at first I didn't want any rewards, basically, for getting shapes. But that's why I put rewards in, to give it a little bit more this empty feeling of that you still, oh yeah, I did something well, And once I used it, I noticed it's not that much different than, for example, using Facebook or something like that, which is also kind of repetitive and pointless, and people still keep using it. And because it's so easy, I'm hoping, of course, you can always in the end only hope, that people will always think, hey, that's an interesting pink square, I'll take that with me.
I can imagine that will be an interesting part of the project, the real experiment in the App Store, and see how many people will download it. Was it, I mean, before you did the summer workshop at V2, were you already working with digital media? Was that...
Well, yes, sometimes. I graduated in unstable media, but I almost have a sort of love-hate relationship with it, because a lot of unstable media, I think it's too much about the gimmick and not enough about the concept. So I moved away from that, but I did work in Art Academy with these unstable new media kind of things.
And what kind of new horizon did you find in the last 2 months working at V2?
That's difficult, because I did notice the ideal platform for sharing this ideal world, because I see myself as a conceptual artist, and this medium is very, it doesn't have the same problems that you have when you have a physical object, that it falls apart, or that you have an exposition shape, and this medium is really it's only in cyberspace basically available, and it's really easy to share it among people. So that's what I really like about it. So I did find a new love, basically.
So what would be the ideal, how to put it, distribution platform for this project for you? I mean, would you kind of want to present it in the gallery space or in the New Media Festival, or would it exist on its own, hidden as a secret on the App Store? Heap of apps.
Heaps, that's the problem with the heap of apps. So I think I would have to use galleries and expositions and maybe online galleries like creative applications to get it out there, to get it spread. But it's not dependent on the gallery space to work. So it works in real life. So the artwork is shared among people.
Can I interrupt for a second? Because maybe there's also some questions out there in the audience. Over here, can we have a microphone? Should I get mine? Oh.
Yeah, thanks. I was wondering, because this sounds, there's some seriousness in it. It's a sort of a statement. You mentioned the situationists in the 60s. How does this whole statement relate to the way you present it here, in a sort of Apple-minded way of viewing at it, sort of museum kind of way of presenting this app?
Well, that's a good question. I guess the problem with software is that it's difficult to expose in this kind of setting, because you just want to have people to use the app. I think it's no problem to use the tricks of marketing like Apple to draw people in, use it a little bit and think, oh yeah, this is good enough, I'll play with it more at home because it's free for download. So I guess everything's allowed in when exposing these types of works. That's how I think about it.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Anyone else? Mariette, do you want to have a last one?
No, I'm curious when it will come out.
Yeah, I hope in next few weeks.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
We have one more addition that we want to add, so hopefully next
Yeah.
week or the week after that.
Because I really believe that it's indeed a concept, and whether how it will work with the audience, the participation of the audience makes the work.
Yeah.
And we could say so. I'm really curious to see the real work happen.
Yeah.
So maybe then Michiel can invite you back after a few weeks, and
I'll explain it.
and then we might meet some very disappointed collectioneurs.
And then I'm happy.
But what we should definitely do is invite everyone to put their email accounts, if you want to download the app, on the little list that we have at the bar. And if you cross Constantijn's project, you get an email when it's available, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's for free, so
Okay.
I'd like to stress that.
Perfect. Thank you, Constantijn. Thank you also, Jan. We're moving on to the next, but first an applause. And for the next demo, we go all the way to the other side, where you must have seen a nice portrait hanging, and maybe also wondering why it's there, or what it does. And this is a project by Carina Hesper, and she will be introduced by lab manager of V2, Boris de Bakker.
Good evening. Well, this is Carina Hesper, and some of you may already know her. Carina, she graduated from the Artists Academy in the Department of Fine Art, but she now mainly works with the medium photography. And before she started her summer session, she was having a long residency in Beijing, where she made a beautiful project, but that's another story. And Carina was very interested and fascinated to see where she could take photography in like a next or a new level. So, and she will tell you all about that, what she has been doing here in the lab.
Thank you, Boris. Yeah, in my time in China, actually, I was researching portraiture in how they look at a portrait in China. Actually, I was using my own face for it. And then this possibility came by to do interactive work here at V2. And I thought of the idea to make a work which actually reacts on you. And this portrait is also inspired by people who are maybe not necessarily normal or different. She's very androgynous, and maybe it makes you stare, or it makes you look again, or it makes you look longer than normal. And for the lighting, it was inspired also a bit by paintings. And maybe Boris can demonstrate the real work, and I will...
Should leave left.
So as you can see, this work is actually looking for a confrontation. Normally art is always looked at, and you can look as close as you want, and it never looks back at you. So what I really wanted to develop is this interaction between you and an art piece as well. So she's actually following you. And I try to make her as human as possible, or in a way, she doesn't react immediately, but it's nice to see and try out, of course. And for me, this whole idea actually started, maybe it's nice to tell the personal story. I have a brother who is transgender, so that's also why I wanted to work with a not very female or not very male model. And maybe you also think about paintings. Sometimes you have some paintings where you have the idea that they always look at you wherever you go. And I actually really wanted to make it for real. To keep, so it needs a certain tension, because if I would just pass it by, like I do sometimes if I'm in a museum, and I don't really see something interesting, I just pass by, then this work also would not react on you. So you need a certain attention for her, then she gives you a certain attention back. So that's the work.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Mariette, maybe you want to do the honor of opening the Q&A?
Yeah, that's definitely and with much pleasure. First of all, let me compliment you on your amazing shoes. I was, of course, looking at the work and at the eyes that were moving. And I was talking to Michel earlier, and what I was saying to him was that what strikes me so much in this project or in this endeavor, this research, is that you used extreme contemporary technology, extreme new school technology, for a trick, I would say, which is extremely old school, because it's indeed true that it's a typical painter's trick to paint the eyes in such a way that if you move around the painting, the eyes follow you. And the most famous example, if you would look it up on Wikipedia, is of course Mona Lisa. The eyes of Mona Lisa always follow you through the room. And I guess there is a reason for it, and I was wondering maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. As a photographer, you've made many portraits, not only of yourself, but you have an amazing portfolio of a very wide range of portrait photographs. Why are the eyes always so important in a portrait?
Good question. I was actually also looking at the Mona Lisa after the first idea come up with my brother. Why are the eyes also always so important for me? If someone is not actually looking at the camera, for me as a viewer, it gives me the time and the space to look very close and look very long and feel free to look as long as I want. And if someone is really looking straight into the camera, it already gives a confrontation in a way. So it makes you feel less comfortable maybe. So that's how I think of it as a photographer. I would, in my photographs, like it a lot to let someone not actually look in the camera, because I like this idea that you have the time to look at someone and to, have this time for that. The freedom. Yeah.
To be almost like a voyeur,
maybe,
I would say. So in the photographs you make, where there's no digital moving image happening, the person never looks at you. But in this digital image, the eyes are super important. Yeah. What do you want them to tell us?
Wow, good question. But maybe also what I really like about it is that what my experience is that the more I see in art, the less time I take maybe to look at it. And because this is quite subtle, maybe it creates this kind of tension between you and her, which makes you look longer and which makes you fascinated. There were some guys actually just before we started, and they said, there's something with this girl, but I don't know what it is. And it keeps me looking. I keep on looking at her. And
how did you decide on, for instance, the size of the image and the height of the image? Is that related to our own height and our own size, or what was your decision?
It's an average of a person, because I like it the most when she's actually on eye height. So it's actually 1.70 meters, I think, which is in the middle. Of course, you have to make a decision because, somewhere in the middle. But I decided to make it as good for the most people, like to have the direct interaction, and also the size is like that, like to have this real confrontation,
Your main interest is photography. You're a photographer. I'm not sure whether this is the first time that you work with a digital moving image. How does it relate to each other? What can digital image or moving image offer you that photography can't completely offer you?
For me, I mainly work with photography, but for me, the concept is actually most important. So sometimes I have a concept for a book, but I don't know yet what to photograph. So it's not like a real photographer that photography is not always the first thing which comes. So I see myself as a conceptual photographer, to name it. And I made a movie before, or like 5 years ago already, so I really like to work with digital media. It's also because I'm a bit impatient, actually. But because it goes quick, photography is quick and helps me develop the ideas. But I like to look further than photography, but my main interest is always digital image or video, but always related to photography or to video or to... This is the next step. It's the first step also into media art.
Or to add some interactive component to it, you know,
Yeah.
to have a real physical relation between the audience and the image.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really love this,
Yeah.
about this work, yeah.
Okay, maybe this is a good time to break it open to the audience. Are there any questions?
Woman, a bit like a man, but did you edit much on the image, or is it just,
Like Photoshop?
for instance, or is it a construction, or is it a real person, or what is it?
So you doubt if it's a real person. That's actually
Well,
really nice. That's what I love.
Also, because you said I don't want a very female woman, so I thought maybe you just also made a kind of average of images, or like also the height. Tell me something about who is it?
Who is it? Well, maybe that's a little bit more boring than you think. It's just a model from an agency.
Okay.
And I searched for androgynous models to match, actually. So, but it's quite nice, actually, that you have this wondering, like, is she real, or did she made it in Photoshop, or did she constructed it? I agree that this image maybe has this a little bit, yeah. It's not that much photoshopped also, it's just very well lightened by Sebastian, actually.
Any other questions? Well, there must be more questions afterward, because you didn't get a chance to stand in front of it yet, but it's very strong the moment you step in front of it. Mariette, do you have a closing question as well?
Closing question. Apart from the sheer beauty of the image, we were talking about painting earlier. Are there references to specific paintings in the positioning of the portrait? Did you, for instance, ask the model, because she has this Mona Lisa-ish expression in her face, you know, her mouth is sort of smiling but not completely. Was that a reference point for you, or am I now being the art historian?
No, it wasn't a reference point. Actually, when I told my idea to several people, also to Boris, the first thing people come up with is the Mona Lisa. And the Mona Lisa is quite straight looking forward. And I actually just looked at her and thought, like, what's the best angle, actually, to photograph her? And I like it more, I mean, she's looking at you, but I like it when there's, as a photographer, when there's like this not completely frontal image. Yeah.
In any case, it's a very strong image, because while we're talking, I see you look at her, I see the whole audience look at her, so...
Yeah. Also, what's quite nice to say, I will be working on an iPad and iPhone version, which you also can download. It's not for free. But yeah, like, I would love it if there is like, for instance, if you have it in your living room and you don't feel alone, maybe, because she's always connecting with you. So there will be, I'm also, this is the same list actually, so I will keep you updated when the app will be, or the portrait will be released.
Yeah, and also if people want to get updates on that, they can register at the bar, right?
There's also a plan to broaden this series with, I will look more at personal or like human behavior, and I'm planning to make more than only this one, so maybe,
Okay.
yeah.
So if you want to receive updates, make sure to put your email address on the list at the bar. Thank you, Carina. Thank you, Boris, for the introduction. Okay, and while some people might have a look because they got quite curious, we're going to move here for the next demonstration, which is a work by Tom Verbruggen, whom I will introduce because I've been his coach over the summer. Tom Verbruggen is a musician, instrument maker, hardware hacker, visual artist. And we're going to see the music maker Tom Verbruggen later on, as he will perform as TokTek later on. But we're going to look at the instrument maker slash visual artist first, whom we had in the summer sessions as a resident. In contrast to most of the submissions that we received for the summer sessions, Tom did not submit just a plan. He actually submitted a work that we thought was already finished, but it turned out it was still quite far from finished. It was, maybe the best metaphor is, it was a guitar, but it didn't have strings yet, and the strings still had to be invented. And I guess that's what Tom did over the summer, invent the strings. And I guess this is time for you to take it away and explain to us what this actually plays, or how it's played.
Yes, does it work? Hey, hello, testing. Cool. Hello, I'm Tom Verbruggen. Wait, let me first power it up. This is module 2. It's a second version of this kind of work. The idea for module 2, I had it I think 3 years ago. I had a group exposition in a really nice old factory. It was used to be a steam-driven factory with a big steam engine that didn't run anymore. And on the ceiling there were big pipes and gears that were once driven by the steam engine. So I thought if I would have a solo exposition there, I would really like to make something like this. It's a really small scaled steam engine. I like the contrast that it's so small and cute, but at the end it makes sound throughout the whole building with solenoids. It's what I like about it is that you can, you have the old technical engine or the old kind of driving mechanism, and you link it also to the old structure of the building that was once driven by this old kind of technique. I hope it works. Today,
maybe you can explain to us how it's linked to these things we just heard.
Yeah, it's this is a hand sawed machine. I made it by hand. At the end, the steam drives this wheel. It drives this machine, and this is like a sequencer. It activates 4 nodes. These nodes get sent wireless to a hidden master brain somewhere, and from that master brain, it goes to the building. Let me see if it's running already. I like the fact that you can present this in different buildings, and every building will have its own kind of soundscape, its own melody it will play.
Maybe while it's running, we can start asking questions, because there must be plenty. Yeah. You want to start?
Of course, I can take the lead. If anyone else wants to ask questions, please feel free to interrupt me at any point. But Tom, apart from the fact that we know you, of course, already as a prolific artist and also a prolific musician, when I walked to this work, I couldn't help but having a sigh of relief, you know, in this new media space, V2, where we just had presentations from apps, iPods, digital moving image. Finally, I saw a machine that I could understand, you know, that makes something happen. However, the machine is linked to quite a high-tech system. So I'm so super curious why, in a way, you play the romantic artist maybe, and show us this beautiful romantic 19th century image of a machine that hides your high-tech, state-of-the-art computer science soundscape. Could you tell us a little bit about that desire to combine this?
Yeah, I really like the kind of fairy tale part about it. I don't think looking at computers and circuit boards is romantic to me.
Not good for your health, or
yeah, and it's not. It doesn't make me. Yeah, it's not what I'm interested in. I'm really interested in this, making this kind of work, and in sound.
Yeah.
So for me, this is a really nice way to leave that link out of it.
And can you imagine to be? It's just my curiosity, because I've been reading a very, very thick book. Michelle has also read it. It's called Sympathy of Things by Lars Spuibroek. And he has this plea for a return to craft, to man-made things, to real things. And in your case, I was sort of wondering, would it be possible for you to entirely leave out the computer part of this work and make a real crafts work? Is that a direction that would interest you?
Yeah, but for me, this is as craft as it gets. I spent it. I made it in 1 year of hand cutting.
How long did you spend?
A year of.
A year.
It's like the whole thing is 1 A4 paper, and I've got this press-through copy. How do you call it? What's the name? Boeklon. But so back home, this is 1 A4 paper, and it's copied along these things. But for your question, I really like also this electronics that I use. I learned myself throughout the years. So for me, it's every step that I develop. It's also for me a craft. Maybe that's also a craft thing.
Contemporary craft. I actually feel very impolite talking through your music piece.
Yep.
Toch? Yeah.
Maybe to continue the discussion, I mean, you could have also gotten this laser cut, right? You could have drawn it out, given it to like the laser cutters, and get it back.
Yes.
So I think Mariette has a point. There is something about it that makes you want to do the crafts.
Yeah. It's also maybe that I come from I studied sculpture and fine art, so I have also that background, and I really like the fact that it's a man-made machine, that it's a human flesh and sweat that made it.
And how important is the visual image of your sound pieces? Is it always a concept that opposes the sound, or what is the way you decide about the image of the sound work?
I really like to see mostly about movement. Something moves, and that's linked to sound. Also, this performance that I will do later here tonight, it's all about movement. If I don't move, there's no sound. So this is also you see something move, and you can link it to the sound. Does it answer your question?
Sort of, but but I can imagine. I mean, for me, it's a very romantic work, and I think it's fantastic, important, and exciting to pair emotion with the often cold image of digital media art.
Yep.
And I think that makes this research very interesting, absolutely.
Yep. Cool. Thank you.
The disadvantage is that we cannot turn it down in volume a little bit for the discussion, right?
No, indeed.
Okay, does anyone want to do a question over the sound?
Uh-oh.
I promised you. Now, maybe it's a very simple question. Why is the sequencer 4-step?
It's also it was already really hard for me developing this, and 4 steps. That was the first. It was also kind of a risk factor, and I thought after this amount of sawing, 4 steps could work, maybe.
Is there going to be a bigger version?
It's going to be linked. It's a module, so it can be extended to other machines. So at the end, this steam engine will run several machines that will work and make sound.
Can I ask another question, which is more about the sound that has now gone, by the way? Is this for you a time-based piece, as in a performance, to which we would come and that would end at a certain point, or do you see it as, say, an art installation? What would it be for you?
Performance, indeed. And it's also, I want to, maybe the performance that you will see later, it's also a sequenced kind of performance. I really would like to use this together with, in combination with the other performance. What I like about it is that it has a natural length of performing.
When you're out of cotton, and it stops.
Yeah, indeed. That's what I really like about it. That it's.
Yeah. Can I ask one?
I think we just ran out of cotton.
Yeah.
Is there still a question in the audience? Do you want to throw in the last one?
Only a very small girly one. I had actually 2 girly ones, but one I'll leave behind. But why is it made out of wood? Is it because it's the only way for you to make it by hand?
Yeah, exactly. That's indeed. It's a really, how do you call it, tactile, or a really handy way to material to work with, and I like the look of it as well. So, and also compared to the contrast between circuitry and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, the contrast between those things, and the small size and a big sound in a big venue. That's a little bit what it's about.
Zeg maar, in the olden days, in the pre-digital era days, boys used to get a steam machine for their birthday when they were 8 or 9. So, I was just thinking. Melancholy.
It was a little bit scary when I built this thing. I needed to figure out a little bit more about the steam engine technique. So I Googled I was on some forums, and I went to some old men's houses, and they were like really hardcore steam fanatics. So they were like, yeah, you need to take this machine, and because it's really powerful. And then I told them, I will only use this part and the boiler. And then they said, no, you can't do that, man. That's not original. You're a bully.
That's great. So you met some steam machine nerds. That's actually great.
Wow. That's a whole underground scene out there.
Okay, next time we'll invite them.
That could be. But then maybe they will trash it because it's the antichrist.
I'm sure they wouldn't crash a beautiful machine like this.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Cool. Thank you.
And we're going to continue right here to see a work by John Stam and Simon de Bakker, and they will be introduced to the lady right next to me, Piem Weert, project manager in the V2 lab.
Yes, thank you. I will keep it very short. I would like to introduce you to our artist duo of our summer sessions, John Stam and Simon de Bakker. John Stam is a product designer with a particular interest in the combination of the physical world and the digital world. And Simon de Bakker is actually our own Simon V2 lab developer, who is in this summer session involved from the artistic perspective, but also the responsible developer for creating the hardware that you see here. So the two of them teamed up to work on charming new take on, let's say, a classic version of the Fisher-Price movie viewer. And this one actually allows you to display your own digital home movie material. So whereas you could see in the past the Disney tapes, you can now upload your own material. Please explain.
Thanks, Thanks, Kim. So yes, this object that me and Simon designed is called the Bioscope. The Bioscope, the name actually came from an early movie projector. The form came from lesser known Fisher-Price movie viewer that used to show 8mm cartoons. And Simon and I have basically redesigned this for a very specific purpose. The purpose is actually home movies. The reason why it's home movies is because home movies somehow break the cinematic rules. So watching movies, we've become somewhat passive. Our gaze has been somewhat passive. We press play on our laptop and we wait till it's finished. We wanted to make a device that would be a little bit different. We thought home movies was the perfect content because it's actually made for private purposes. It's made for a select audience, but even as home movies age, the quality becomes even richer. And so this device is for home movies, which are either digital, so home movies of today, or digitized. So old home movies have been digitized. It works, it's very simple. It's basically, there's a USB input, and you put a USB in the device. And once you put it in the device, you see basically the first frame of a movie. But this device is actually quite demanding. It demands that you engage with the movie. So you actually have to do something, you have to interact to actually see the film, to actually animate the frames. And so when you turn the dial forwards, the frames will advance. When you turn it back, it will go in reverse. If you go really fast, it will go fast. If you go slow, if you stop, it will stop at a specific frame. And it's also designed for one person. So one person can view it at a time. And this means that each individual has a sort of subjective experience where they can actually, they can experience this film in a completely personal way, and perhaps even construct a narrative construct a new narrative, because you can actually play with the chronology of the film. So that is pretty much the concept behind the device. This device is quite small, but there's quite a lot of things in it, as you can see. And Simon is going to explain a little bit about the guts of the Bioscope.
Hello? Yeah, I'll try to do that, but the steps we had to take to make something, transform some analog device into some analog digital device, basically. So the original Fisher-Price Bioscope had like a big 8mm cassette. We are using this tiny USB stick over there, so that was the first thing to tackle, is how to adjust the casing so it fits the USB stick, and you need to make the big hole very small, basically. Next thing is you need something that reads the USB stick and your movies and displays it on this tiny little LCD screen. For that, we took the new Raspberry Pi. Some of you may be a bit familiar with that. It's the new hyped Arduino on steroids, basically. But it takes like a lot of power. You need a lot of power to run it. So that's another problem. You need to have a battery for it. You don't want to have like a power cord hanging out. We do have a power socket here, but it's only for charging. You don't need to have it all the time there. Next thing is you have the dial. First it was like a mechanical approach, that you have the cassette with the 8mm in the dial, connected directly to the cassette and transported to film. We have now like a rotary encoder connected to this board. So yeah, what we did basically, we took the Raspberry Pi and developed a custom shield, sort of add-on board for it that contains a few power supplies, battery charger, and some extra features like a tilting sensor, so it turns off when you put it down or when you take it up to conserve some power over there. Also, we want to play a bit with experimenting with more intrinsic features of the old machine, which is like the lighting and the nice lighting you have when you look through some 8mm films. So we also have some adjustable lighting in there, basically. So we can play around with these things as well. That's also, that's basically what's in the casing. And then you have the casing itself, of course, which we need to model so that everything fit into the original design. I think the new one is just a bit smaller.
It's about 2 centimeters smaller than the original.
Smaller, exactly.
Yeah.
So we actually saved some space there. And that was modeled and eventually 3D printed. It was nylon sintering?
Laser sintering.
Laser sintering,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Laser sintering of nylon powder or something complicated like that. And we actually have one analog part still left here, which is the focus. It's not autofocus, it's just you have to manually adjust the lens so you can actually see the image very sharp. That's
so
about it, I think.
the device, actually, we basically tried to do a lot this summer to try to build in a lot of features and really reduce the size and try to get this battery working because we actually built this device for people's homes. It is about home movies, and we see this thing as something that you would have on your shelf, something that you can actually pick up and consult the meaningful images of your life. So that is basically why we what we were busy with this summer. And just to explain a little bit about the films that are showing, and we're obviously going to pass it around. I'm not sure if everyone will be able to see it. You can see some sort of experience, but it's definitely not the same where you see this kind of frame by frame moving. But the films are actually on these USB sticks, and you'll see that these USB sticks are actually streets, street numbers, and cities. And these are actually the homes of the filmmakers. So these filmmakers where we collected these films are coming from very different places and different times. But we wanted to somehow keep it close to the home. This is the home, the families of the people who shot these films. And yeah, that's basically the idea behind the collection. So.
Yeah, there's also still one thing about the stuff that's inside, basically. We put a lot of thought in making everything connectable and disconnectable and things, and also because it's not for a one-time use. It's the plan that it will be used in our previous project, actually, which was a digitized Viewmaster. It's sort of the same there. But also we are sort of trying to see if we can release it as open hardware project, and so actually other people can also benefit, because there is not such a board like it's at the moment for this device.
So we're going to try to continue with this project, but our process is going to be documented and left open, and hopefully people can find that it's interesting and useful. So that's it. Yeah. And I will just pass it around maybe now. You already...
well, people can have a look at it later, right?
Okay, perfect.
But we're first going to do some questions. Starting with one from you, Marit?
Yes, from the critical but mostly curious person. And I must say that I was actually slightly disappointed, because I was so looking forward to seeing my home videos on a virtual reality glasses, you know, and be completely immersed in all those...
Then this object isn't for you.
Yeah, exactly. So I was really curious that, you know, if you read the newspaper, watch videos, it's all about immersing in the visual experience through 3D glasses, virtual reality glasses, suits that make you feel every movement you see on the screen. For you, you're kind of looking towards another kind of experience of personal memories with one eye and with physical activity. Could you tell a little bit about your ideas of why you do that in relation to the big immersion trend?
Yeah, because I'm actually coming from a product design background, but my background is actually with often traditional materials. So this is I've in most of my project the tactility, the tangibility is always extremely important. But on the same time, basically what is by making it digital is opening a lot of possibilities. This possibility where it's actually still accessible, that you can still share it. It's not, for me, it's not reductive. It's not. Of course, there is somewhat of a nostalgic element, but I don't see it as pure nostalgia. I don't see it as a digital hack. I see it as somehow trying to bring these two together and trying to pick out things that are personally interesting and important for me. So the idea that you actually can have a tactile experience, but at the same time be able to share and remix and make your own content for it is really important. And this is why the intrinsic characteristics of the analog and the digital are somehow work together. And me and Simon had lots of discussions about what is important and what do we want to do and how can we bring these together in a way that we feel that this will be meaningful.
Or how do you want us to experience moving image?
The whole point is that for me the idea of having to interact is one thing. It demands this, but the ability to actually stop, for me, is the most important. And then everyone can actually pick their own frame that is this punctum, that is this thing that is just holds them, and that is different for everyone else. Mm-hmm. And I think that is kind of the main thing that I love about the project is you have to move, you have to interact to keep going, but you can stop where you want to, and you can say that this is meaningful to me.
You were saying while we were talking about it, there is a slight element of nostalgia in it, forbidden word, but and that has to do a lot with the way it's designed, I would say. Yeah. This is a reference to a children's toy from the 60s, or?
It actually was. It first came out as Movie Viewer, which was an Italian toy, and then Fisher Price picked it up. Yeah. But then it was somehow discontinued because then producing or copying 8mm films was just expensive, so I was actually not aware of it at all until I was at a flea market and found this device. And this device just really captivated me. I was just completely...
Why did it captivate you? What captivated this? For me, of course, retro design. What does it tell you?
Well, for me, it was, when looking through it, and I actually saw, so the Fisher Price ones were more kind of animation cartoon ones. But the one that I saw was this kind of hybrid, half animation, half people. and once I actually stopped at this child's face and I saw this image and I thought, wow, this is super powerful. And then I could keep going, and then I could find another frame that I thought was extremely moving. Yeah. And for me, it was this idea that I could actually go through and kind of somehow collect these meaningful images.
Would you say that it's also about the power of man over machine, that it is a more concrete power that you feel when you can operate it manually instead of digital operation?
Yeah, I think that again, we're not trying to limit the fact that it is digital and that this can be shared and it can be played on any sort of device, but this is designed for specific use. So yeah.
Who took the lead in the form? Because I can imagine you had an expert explanation of all the technical details that were happening. I mean, when you were told it should be in this machine, did you not try to advise him to do differently?
No. No, it's actually, I very much like the form of the device and the simplicity it has. And also the challenge to keep it simple in that sense, to make an electronic device which you just put in something and it works. It's just, that's something you do not really see that often.
To me, it's also quite related to the work of Tom, because there's also this element of, again, the romantic turn in it, you know? Like the way you both describe it, you almost have an affectionate relationship with this object. That is, of course, much different than considering it just as a tool.
Yeah.
Shall we give the audience a chance at the question? But can I first ask the people in the back to give us a few more minutes of concentration? Thank you. Any more questions here?
It's a somewhat technical question. The movies on the USB, is it something like an AVI, or did you extract it every single frame to something like a JPEG? Or
That's exactly what we sort of did. It's motion JPEG. We also referred to a nostalgic format in that sense, yes. Because we do not want the time information in there, because we want to go back. Right now we do that in the computer basically, but next generation, next version does the conversion in the machine itself. It's a little detail.
So there will be a next generation?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, then I want to at least know what other features the next generation will have.
I think basically what we want to make it accessible as possible. So now we're working with movies that are encoded in a specific way, but the idea is that anyone could actually put any USB stick in, and it doesn't matter whether it's images or movies. It's basically whatever content that someone deemed was meaningful enough to store can be viewed on this device. So that for me is the first step.
Yeah, and there's like this is first prototype, so there are always like little issues of technical nature you run into, which need to be changed, improved.
But that's also why we're here tonight. We're testing. So.
Yeah. No, yes. right now the dial is working actually perfectly, but some people move it too fast, and then it has this sort of catch up. So once you stop, the frames will continue a little bit, but in a way that we actually kind of liked it, because if you're moving really fast, you're getting this momentum, and then you let it go, and then it will go a few more frames, and then you'll find out what frame you stop at. So
it's like stored energy somewhere. Right?
Is there a final question among the audience? Mariette, do you have one? Oh, Ivan?
Is there a possibility for the devices it's turning like to self-generate energy somehow? Like
we actually were thinking about that as well. It will never generate the amount of energy that's needed to let the whole thing run, but it certainly can be sort of hybrid system, which partly charges the battery again. It's an option. We had 6 weeks, so it was not really an option for us at this moment. We also thought about letting the dial generate the background lighting, for example. So only if you turn the dial, the light will come up eventually. It was too short notice for this development trajectory, but it's certainly something we will still be thinking about because it's an interesting idea. So.
Do you still want that last question?
Oh, yeah, or a closing remark, whatever you want.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And at this last conversation that we were having, it kind of struck me that the beauty of this evening is that we have 4 works that, although they are dealing with a very contemporary state-of-the-art technology, also made us travel through history from 15th century painting to 19th century steam machines to from the 20th century image devices to state-of-the-art iPhone apps. And I think it's beautiful in this postmodernist, meta-modernist times that you see that the freedom of the artist means that using this state-of-the-art technology is not the primary goal. It's used to express their opinions and views and taking pics from all parts of history, pics that with which they make works that are actually all very intimate. Although we are here in a public space, all of them talk to us from person to person, from individual, the maker, to the viewer, the audience. And I think it's a great beauty to see that in almost all the works, the audience is no longer a group, but an individual with his or her own history that also plays a part in the work. And so I'm really happy that I was part of this journey tonight.
Thank you. Before I do some closing comments, maybe give John and Simon an applause. Yep. And that marks the end of the sort of formal part of the evening, but definitely not the end of the evening itself. Now we have about half an hour for you to see everything up close, try the devices out, speak to the artists, of course. And then it's time for TokTek to perform on this very stage here. We will also be serving a refreshing cocktail because it got kind of warm in here, which is called, what is it called again? The Summer Sorbellini. Looking forward to that. But I would first like to thank all of our summer sessionists, Constantijn Smit, Carina Hesper, Tom Verbruggen, Stam and Simon de Bakker, not just for their presentation tonight, but for their hard work over the whole summer period. I think that deserves an applause. I would like to thank Mariette Dolle for being here tonight, doing such a great job on the critical respondents. Also, the people at V2 who worked on these projects, helped making them reality tonight, and the people behind the scenes working on this event. Jan Pien Boers you've seen in action, but also Simon and Artem Baginski have been working as our developers on these projects. And I would like to thank our lab assistant Sebastian Frisch, who also sort of did a little bit in all of the projects. So thank you also the volunteers at the bar. I would like to make a small pitch here for a performance we have next weekend during the festival Wereld van de Witte de Wit, which is a performance called Unmanned. It's about drone technology and it will actually feature some live drone technology. So it's going to be very excited. Friday, Saturday and Sunday we have performances. I wish you a lot of fun still in the testing phase, drinking that cocktail and with TokTek's performance. Have a good night.